Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new camp build. So today's build is inspired by, at least in part, a comment that was made on last week's video, kind of in passing, and yeah, sort of reworked an old concept for this one. So let's jump in. Okay, so yeah, somebody mentioned that the prefab I used last week would actually work quite well in the Mire, which is an interesting thought. But really got me thinking that I haven't built up in the Mire in quite a long time, so it's kind of fun to come back up here. And I'm using a concept that I've kind of used before, but really embracing it this time. So this is where we are, not a massively original location, up here by the lake. Do excuse the death, I had a rather unfortunate incident involving a rad toad and me not being even remotely prepared for it. There we go, over there by the lake, up at the north end of the Mire. Quite a popular spot here on the south side of the lake, and there's a bit of water around, but it works fairly well. So the goal with this one, and one of the things I really wanted to lean into, was having this kind of swamp hut sit underneath the trees, which is slightly awkward here on the shore of the lake, because, you know, the trees kind of stop there. But in this case, it worked out quite nicely. So we've got our 2x3 foundation in, because I do like to do these quite small. Popped up this extra foundation just a little bit, so when I snap the stairs onto the front, they're just a little bit higher, because we're going to do an interesting entranceway to this one. So I'm going to need to just lift this second foundation here up so that I can remove the first one and leave the stairs floating. I will link a tips video with how to do that if you want to see it in a bit more detail. And we're going to grab this covered bridge cap, which is like a miniature version of the one next to the wayward, and use this as kind of a front porch. I've used it as entranceways to camps as a whole before, but it works quite nicely as a kind of different vibed front porch for this one. And it works really nicely with the abandoned mine kit that we're going to be building with today, because the wood looks kind of similar, so it works quite nicely. Speaking of abandoned mine kit, let's get the doorway in. There's sort of 3 doors for this one, at least 3 I think, with different kind of awnings over the front door, and I kind of went for the one without here, just because obviously we've got our own cover in place already. So we get a couple of windows in, a door on the side, because we're going to need an external space, and we'll put some extra walls in. Switching over to the half-size walls, well, just come around this side. I'm going to have a kitchen down this end, and because I do like to try and change up heights and angles and just mix the shape up a little bit, I'm going to have a low part of the building down at that end behind us. So we'll get a staircase in here. I'm using this framed one because it allows me to tuck the stairs right over by the wall, and we're going for a kind of rustic tumble-down, kind of reclaimed wood vibe for this, and the mesh floor actually kind of works for that. So we're going to grab the different textured mesh floors here, using the half ones, because the full-size ones just have the one look to them. And we'll mix them up, make this a little bit more scrappy and interesting. There we go. Now we can head upstairs and get a upper section in. So obviously this will be the bedroom. I'm going to just use half walls on this one again, because I don't like too much height, as I have long since established, so run those all the way around. And initially I went for the corner roof pieces here, but we'll change that up slightly in a moment. So 2 corner ones on the front, and 2 just regular slopes across the back, which means we can then close that off. And I'll make an adjustment to the front section in a minute, but it'll give us a nice bit of headroom for a bed when we come to decorate this place. So there we go. I'm using these copper roofs, by the way. They came from the Halloween set, the second Halloween set, I should say, that was released last year, I believe, about a year ago. Coming up on, and I've picked this one because the hanging vines go quite nicely in this area with this kind of build, and also they just look a little different. You know, the copper looks really kind of reclaimed and salvaged, so I quite like that combination. Plus with the lighting scheme and the colours of the Mire, it works quite nicely in that regard as well. So there we go, looking okay. We definitely need to change that main section's profile a little bit, so we're going to change this front corner a bit, so we've only got the one corner piece, and this extra one becomes a slope. Just changes the profile a little bit. We'll get that triangle piece in, and unfortunately this inverted triangle, when I can find it, there it is a little bit less cooperative, because, well, something had to be, didn't it? So we'll whip that one out. Nope, still not going in. I have actually got the wrong piece here, but the right one wouldn't work at this point either, so, you know, this is what it is. And now we'll swap out for the correct triangle. There we go, and now it snaps in much more easily with nothing interfering with the positioning there. So now we'll put the roof back in. Okay, that should meet up nicely, and that last bit of wall in. And if we drop back down again, should see a slightly more interesting profile to the building. There we go. Less even, a lot more interesting angles and things. Just makes the whole thing look a bit more organic and a bit more interesting. So, I mentioned we had that side door, and we're going to need an outside space because I need to put my crafting benches somewhere. This sort of build as it is right now would work fine if you weren't too worried about where your crafting benches go, but we need a bit of space, really. So I wanted to use these destroyed camp porches, but my bridge front porch thing there is kind of blocking it, so kind of worked around that a little bit. I tried flamethrowing it and all manner of other things, but of course it's technically a foundation, so you can't destroy it. But there we go. So put a couple of these porches on the end here, just sticking off, and this is where the issue is, this section in front of the window. And basically you can see the bridge porch thingamajig I've created on the right there has a bit of overhang from the roof. That's where the problem is. But a regular foundation will go in just fine, so we'll get a bit creative and make it look a bit different, which actually worked out quite nicely. So we're going to head around the back here and do a bit of a classic. Grab the chain link fence, which is from the old Halloween set, which, if you're wanting to pick these up, should be making a reappearance fairly soon, I would think, so keep an eye out. Yeah, I'm going to just carefully push that into the frame of the porch here, because apparently collision is not an issue here, or not too much of one anyway. So we'll just kind of bury that in the wood of the posts, and it should make for a nice enclosed space that's not too solid. It looks really kind of scrappy and old and like it's falling apart, and it's been exposed to quite a lot of moisture in the mire. So quite a good look, I think. So getting the rest of these in, we get a little bit of a collision issue with the edges of the chain link specifically here. So you have to kind of finagle a little bit, but it's actually quite forgiving and reasonable, especially once you turn the snapping off. So actually getting this plugged in is quite nice and easy. It does stick out a little bit on this right-hand end, but you can't really tell, mostly down to the lighting, and scrappy is kind of the vibe we're going for. So this last section, I decided to mix it up and go for a busted up white picket fence. Gone for the dirty one because I don't want it too clean, but a little bit of contrast, a little bit of difference, just to make a little bit more detail and make the whole thing pop a little bit, make it a bit more interesting to look at is not a bad idea. So these vines were added earlier in the year, and I'm quite happy to make some use out of those again. They look quite cool on this kind of shack in the mire. Technically speaking, the colour is not quite right for the mire. It's not green vines like this in the mire. They would make a little bit more sense in the forest, but anyway. But with the lighting, it kind of mutes the colour a little bit anyway, so it works all right. They are a bit finicky about where they'll place. Sometimes they won't place where they should do. Sometimes they will place where they shouldn't. It's very, very strange. But a little bit of patience and trial and error and stuff gets things in. We did recently have added, by the way, to these vines, half-wall-sized sections. So we were missing those originally, and they were subsequently added, which is pretty cool. And yeah, looking pretty decent on the top there, I think. Again, not necessarily able to snap the one in that I'd like, but it'll do. It kind of makes the textures a bit more interesting. Makes the whole thing feel a bit more kind of overgrown and organic and like it's been here for a long time. So, with that more or less done, the last few things I want to do is add a couple of little extra supporting pieces, like this junk fence here, and I'll add some other fences around just to texture up the outer surface as well. And with that done, I think it's time I headed off and decorated, and saw you all in the tour in just a minute. So, thoroughly decorated. I've done this sort of in the late afternoon, early evening, so the lighting should shift as we explore around this place, and it'll look quite nice, because I really like how this place looks in the evening. Notice on the left there, I've put a whole bunch of extra trees in. We don't really have Mire-style trees available, but I did the best I could with autumn ones, because I really wanted the shack to feel like it's kind of huddled under the trees a little bit. And obviously on that left-hand end, there kind of aren't any trees, so this sort of extends that feeling out a little bit more, even if it's not quite perfect. Certainly gets the right kind of vibe, I think. So I've added a few kind of Mothman cultist totems and other bits and pieces like that kind of give that creepy, tumble-down shed shack thing in the Mire vibe, and I quite like the look overall. Something I've sort of played with before, but this particular one, I kind of like how it's come out. The tone is just a little bit different to the previous versions I've done, and it's yeah, it looks like the place is kind of rotting around you in a way, but it's not quite so serial killer shack, but I kind of like it for that. So a little bit of that vibe, not quite so much. So the lighting in the Mire is some of the most unique in 76, and it gets a bit weird at times. At this point, obviously, it's a bit washed out, But as the evening draws in, the colours will kind of go in intensity as well, as they do in the day as well. So you kind of get a whole host of different kind of looks and vibes and tones to this, which is quite cool. Well, that plane on the floor there, that's just in this area, which adds to the debris and stuff around quite nicely. And I've kind of lent into that with lots of kind of debris and junk and trash just piled around the place, which I quite like the look of. I do like using those flamingos lately. But that's one of the reasons I've gone for the Slocum's Joe vendor here rather than one of the other ones. It's not plugged in, it's not powered. There's actually no power in this place at all. But it does kind of look like something that's been dragged back and left to kind of rust in the rain a little bit. Toilet on the side there. Just be a little careful if you have to use it. Yeah, with that kind of junk item that's just been chucked in the corner by it, works quite nicely with the build, I think. You can sort of see the contrast with the white picket fences in places as well, just giving it a little bit splash more colour that kind of makes stuff stand out. Stuck a stuffed Mothman over the entrance. I tried a few different bits and pieces up there, and that one I thought was quite fun. A whole pile of junk around the front door. We'll head on inside. So a little bit more homely inside here, even if it does have the kind of old, abandoned, slightly falling down vibe. But I've used a whole bunch of more recent acquisitions to decorate this place up with, which I'm quite happy about. So we've got the wine rack display there from the current season, which is supposed to be a display case, but doesn't seem to work like a display case. Although last time I said something to this effect, I turned out to be wrong. So have a play around and see what you can figure out. It does look quite nice in here. And you can get stuff added to it quite nicely. Got the pots and pans up there, and a whole bunch of little bits and pieces. I'm really happy to have some extra kitchen-style decorations recently. It's quite fun. Haven't used the clean modern kitchen for obvious reasons in this build, but I did merge a cooking station into a stash box there just to kind of tuck it into the corner. Obviously can't access the oven that way, but you know, we can't have everything, can we? If you don't want to merge things, you could just use a shorter stash box and that would still look just as good, I think. Yeah, I do quite like that. Lots of bits of detail and stuff going on. Put the chemistry bench in there for the sink as well. I did consider using a different sink, but I want just kind of... It separates off the kitchen a little bit, and it works quite nicely in the space, I thought. I had to push things back a bit to make sure I could access all the benches, but it works okay. Squeezed my brewing station in there. I often put these outside, but not a lot of room outside in my crafting area, and I had some kind of dead space in this corner, so that worked quite nicely. Loads of little bits of extra added detail on and around this wine rack here. I like that you could kind of fit things in the gaps. Some extra bits I was able to place on the edge, although those internal shelves, as always with 76, are a bit of a nightmare to work with. And a whole bunch of extra detail on the walls in here, just to break up the texture a little bit. Quite happy with how it looks, but haven't gone too crazy with it. Got a lot of old bits and pieces that look like they've been kind of salvaged in here. So I put the speed bag there and stuff. Little radio in the corner there. I did consider putting a non-functional TV in the place, but it just seemed a little kind of out of character for the build, so I elected not to in the end. So let's squeeze around the sofa here. You can see I've tucked my shelter entrance onto the stairs. I do like doing that. It puts it out of the way, and it kind of makes sense to have a basement somewhere. For that particular shelter anyway, so yeah, I like that spot for it. We'll head outside. I did a decent amount of extra junk around to our crafting area just to scrap it up a bit and make the whole thing sort of continue that tumble down salvaged vibe. Which works quite nicely in here. It goes quite well with the chain link as well. There's a lot of busyness going on in the place. Tucked my power armor station in the corner there. Maybe I should have gone for a different kind of maybe darker coloured power armor bench, but I really want one that's rusty. And there is a Raider version, but I'm not too into it. And I don't have it anyway, so this is what it is. Symptomatic was a bit of a tight squeeze to persuade that to go in, but it came out okay. I had to flamethrower the wall behind it to push it back as far as I could, but yeah, quite happy with the results there. Yeah, all in all, a very functional camp. A lot of little bits of detail and interest and stuff to just kind of busy it up and create that kind of tumble down, slightly rotten swamp shack kind of vibe. It's definitely one of my favourite build styles, so I do like doing that. As I say, I haven't built in the Mire in a little while, so I do like kind of places that blend into the environment with the Mire, and I think something that kind of tucks under the trees and looks like it's kind of succumbing to the moisture in the area really does keep it, kind of get that vibe going and look right like it's part of the environment, so that was what I was going for. I know I use that cave diving suit on a mannequin a lot for decoration, but it's one of those things. It's not much use, but it's kind of a cool thing to have around, so it works well for that. And again, it kind of feels good with this kind of build as well. So this room, the bedroom, really was a bit of a head scratcher. Finding something that made sense, that was not too homely, was a bit tumble down, was kind of difficult, so I went with a bit of a cultish kind of a vibe, slightly serial killer bedroom. Maybe it would have been better around Halloween, but yeah, going the other direction, having something too clean would have been, obviously, would not have fit in with the rest of the build, but kind of, it feels a little bit too Halloween at the same time for me. It was a tough balance to really walk with this one. But it meant I could use that four-poster bed with all the bloodstains on it and not have it look too out of place in this build. Kind of goes with the rest of the shack. And yeah, I'm quite happy I picked that bed up, but yes, it doesn't look that appealing most of the time. Yeah, I kind of put the Arguous egg on the side there, and that skulls and the playing cards with blood all over them, just to kind of create that really kind of... It kind of leans into the creepier end of the build a little bit, but yeah. I kind of find there's either homely or there's creepy, and you can go really into the kind of improvised vibe, but that, again, wouldn't quite fit with the vibe of the rest of the camp, I don't think. Yeah, all in all, I'm okay with it, although it's not quite what I would have liked, I think. There's a couple of bits here and there that are a little bit cleaner than I would have liked, but yeah, on the whole, I do quite like this camp, and like I say, I really like the colours, the lighting, and the way it kind of huddles under the trees and blends into the environment of the mire, and looks like it's been here for a really long time. And we'll get another good look at that with the evening light kicking in a bit more as we back off here, because that brings us to about the end of this tour. So, if you did enjoy the video, please do consider dropping subs and likes, and checking out the social media links down below as well. Notification bell as well if you want to keep up to date with everything that I'm doing. Join us for live streams as well if you get the chance. We are, of course, playing Fallout 76 and having a good time with some Starfield as well. Really, really enjoying that. So I do hope we'll see you there. And if you'd like to support the channel through channel memberships, I really, really appreciate that as well. It massively helps out. So huge thanks to everyone who's done that. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.